You know, it is really great to finally be able to say that the new Avatar movie is coming out next month, and I say without exaggeration that Avatar Fire and Ash is my most anticipated film of this decade so far. Granted, that's about to change when The Mandalorian and Grogu comes out. But nonetheless, I'm hyped out of my mind to see this movie, and out of all the things to speculate about with this film, one major topic of discussion is, interestingly enough, the box office, because the first Avatar film is the highest grossing film of all time, with a total of $2.9 billion in ticket sales, while the sequel, The Way of Water, is the third highest grossing film of all time with $2.3 billion. So needless to say, the expectations for this film to perform at an incredibly high level are, well, incredibly high. But how much money exactly will Avatar Fire and Ash make? Something that is interesting to point out is that this is the first time we've had a gap between Avatar films that's less than 13 years. As a matter of fact, it's only 3 years this time. So will that work to this film's advantage, or will that work against it? Well, when you look at a lot of film series, you often see the revenue go down with each film. This is often the case with the Star Wars trilogies as well as Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, the Back to the Future trilogy, the list just goes on and on. Not to say that future installments weren't successful, but it's very clear audiences like to see new things they haven't seen before, or at least things they haven't seen in a while. That's why franchises often get a big revenue boost when a major series comes back after being absent from the big screen for years. However, it is not always the case that these films make less and less money as they go on. The Lord of the Rings trilogy made more money with each installment, getting up to Return of the King grossing over $1 billion. The Harry Potter films typically made more and more until the finale made $1.3 billion, and that was a series of 8 movies, so it's not impossible to build up momentum throughout your film series. I mean, just look at the box office results for Avengers Infinity War and especially Avengers Endgame. People like to see these big stories reach their culmination. So while it is true that a lot of franchises decrease in revenue each installment, Avatar is not most franchises. And we just have not seen how an Avatar film is going to perform building off of the momentum of a previous installment, because again, we had a 13-year gap between the original film and the sequel. What I will say is almost a guarantee is that Avatar Fire and Ash will have the highest opening weekend of the franchise thus far. Because something that a lot of people forget about the Avatar films is that when you look at like the top 10 highest opening weekends of all time, Avatar is completely absent from the list. The original Avatar film in 2009 had an opening weekend of $77 million domestically, which is pretty impressive for a blockbuster released in 2009, but it's shockingly low considering the amount of money it would end up making by the end of its theatrical run. Meanwhile, Avatar The Way of Water grossed $134 million domestically in its opening weekend, which is again very impressive, but seems kind of low considering it's a sequel to the highest grossing film in history. Now, worldwide, Avatar 2 did make well over $400 million over that weekend, but this is not a film that solely relies on international ticket sales. Both Avatar installments thus far are also among the top 10 highest grossing domestic films of all time. Avatar Fire and Ash is the first movie in the franchise to really take advantage of the momentum leading into its opening weekend. So don't be surprised if this thing ends up doing well over $200 million in its first weekend. The Avatar films have always been movies that have relied on incredible legs at the box office, and I think Fire and Ash will be no exception. But the question is, in terms of its final box office numbers, how will it compare to the first 2 films? If I had to put money on it, I do think Fire and Ash will be the lowest grossing movie in the franchise thus far. However, I still expect it to more than likely cross the $2 billion mark, and just to put things in perspective, I do think it will probably gross more than the box office total of Avengers Infinity War, and even Star Wars The Force Awakens, so don't think there's any reason to be worried about the future of the Avatar films in theaters. I mean, $2 billion is $2 billion. It's insane that for literally every other film franchise, we're debating if the next installment's going to make $1 billion or not, and for Avatar, we're debating whether or not it's going to make $2 billion. I think there's even a pretty fair chance that Avatar 3 ends up surpassing the box office total of Titanic, although that does seem a little less likely to me. That's a great film, but I'm still not sure why that made so much money. But that just adds to the idea that we should never doubt James Cameron when it comes to his filmography and how his movies do in theaters, because the nickname King of the Box Office has been well earned on his part. And just so you know, I'm not going to be shocked if Avatar Fire and Ash does end up passing the previous film to become the 3rd highest grossing movie in history, because as I discussed, we really don't know how Avatar as a film series is able to build momentum, because all we have to go off of is a 13-year time gap. And this franchise in particular, there's something about it that is really special. There is no other theater experience like it. So if you're going to see this movie, you are going to see it in theaters, most likely in 3D, maybe even IMAX 3D, which adds money to its box office. And it does feel like it's one of the last movies that really does care first and foremost about the theatrical experience, because that's what movies were originally designed for, is to play in the theater. And when you have a great time at the theater watching a movie, it does give you more of an incentive to buy the movie when it releases on home video and maybe even get a physical copy, because there is still something to that. I understand DVDs in particular are dead nowadays, But I do remember being quite surprised back in 2023 when I saw this big display case for the physical media release of Avatar The Way of Water, and it was empty. Like, people were really buying the physical media for this movie. But yeah, nonetheless, I'm just very excited for the series to continue, for the story to continue, and the more you think about it, it's really not difficult to see why it's dominating Hollywood right now. But those are just my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, and let me know, are you excited for Avatar Fire and Ash? Will you be seeing it in theaters, and what are your expectations going into the film? I plan to do a few videos actually speculating about what will actually happen in the story, but I thought the box office of these movies is actually a pretty interesting topic in and of itself. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.